The waitress never expected to find love when death came knocking, but fate had other plans that stormy night at Rosie's diner. Sarah wiped down the last table, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. The rain pounded against the windows of the empty diner, matching the rhythm of her broken heart. 6 months since Mom's cancer diagnosis, and the medical bills kept piling up while her dreams of college faded away. A sudden pounding at the door made her jump. Through the rain-streaked glass stood a man in a drenched suit, blood streaming down his face. "Please," he mouthed, his eyes desperate. Every instinct screamed danger, but something in those eyes made her hesitate. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the door. "Thank you," he gasped, stumbling inside. "They're trying to kill me." Before Sarah could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot. The man yanked her down behind the counter as bullets shattered the front windows. "I'm Jack," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "And I'm sorry I brought this mess to your doorstep." "What did you do?" Sarah hissed, heart hammering against her ribs. "I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know." His eyes met hers. Something that could bring down the most powerful man in the city. Mayor Wilson. The untouchable king of their small town who'd foreclosed on her mother's house while she lay in her hospital bed. "Why should I help you?" Sarah demanded, even as another spray of bullets peppered the wall above them. Jack pulled out his phone, showing her documents with numbers that made her eyes widen. "Because this money belongs to the people he stole from. Including your mother, Sarah Jenkins." Her breath caught. "How do you?" "I've been tracking his victims for months." Jack's eyes softened. "I never expected to find one of them tonight." The gunfire stopped. Heavy footsteps approached the broken door. "There's a back exit through the kitchen," Sarah whispered. "Follow me." They crept through the industrial kitchen, past the hulking refrigerator where Sarah had spent countless hours prepping for the morning rush. The exit door's hinges creaked, a sound that had always annoyed her during smoke breaks but now might cost them their lives. Jack's hand found hers in the darkness, warm and steady despite everything. They slipped into the alley behind the diner just as the kitchen door burst open behind them. "My car's 3 blocks away," Jack whispered, tugging her toward the shadows. "Can you run?" Sarah kicked off her waitress shoes, the cold pavement shocking against her stockinged feet. "Faster than you, rich boy." They sprinted through back alleys slick with rain, Sarah leading the way through shortcuts only locals knew. Behind them, angry shouts echoed off brick walls. A gunshot cracked the night, the bullet pinging off a dumpster inches from Sarah's head. Jack yanked her behind a recessed doorway, his body shielding hers as footsteps thundered past. His heartbeat hammered against her cheek, his cologne mingling with the metallic scent of blood from his forehead wound. "You're bleeding pretty bad," she whispered when the danger had passed. "Grazed by a bullet back at the diner." His smile was tight with pain. "I've had worse." "Somehow I doubt that," Sarah muttered, tearing a strip from her uniform to press against his wound. Jack's sleek black Audi was hidden in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse parking lot. As they peeled away from the curb, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe, only to gasp when she saw the blood soaking through Jack's shirt. "That's not from your head," she said, pointing to his side. Jack's face was pale in the dashboard light. "Might have caught another one." "No hospitals, they'll be watching." "Then where?" His eyes met hers, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Do you trust me?" Sarah almost laughed. "I just fled a shooting with a bleeding stranger. Trust isn't exactly on the table." "Fair enough." Jack's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "But I need somewhere to patch up and regroup. Somewhere they won't look." That's how they ended up at Mabel Johnson's farmhouse on the outskirts of town, the elderly woman who'd been like a grandmother to Sarah since she was small. Mabel took one look at them on her porch, rain-soaked and blood-stained, and simply said, "Kitchen table. I'll get my sewing kit." While Mabel's gnarled fingers stitched Jack's side with the same precision she used on her prize-winning quilts, Sarah made coffee and explained as much as she dared. "Mayor Wilson, huh?" Mabel snorted, cutting surgical thread with her teeth. "That snake foreclosed on half the farms in the county after the drought. Including the Petersons' place, they'd had that land for 4 generations." Jack's eyes met Sarah's across the kitchen. "Add them to the list." They spent that first night in Mabel's spare rooms, Jack feverish from his wounds, Sarah too wired to sleep. She sat by his bedside, watching his face in the moonlight, wondering how her life had changed so completely in a matter of hours. "Why me?" she whispered when his eyes fluttered open near dawn. "Why trust me with all this?" Jack's hand found hers, his touch burning with fever. "Your eyes," he murmured. "When you opened that door, I saw someone who'd lost everything but hadn't lost herself." By morning, Mabel had packed them sandwiches, first aid supplies, and her late husband's revolver. "Frank would have wanted it used for something worthwhile," she said, pressing it into Sarah's hands. "You bring this back when you've finished what you started." Days turned into weeks as they stayed one step ahead of the mayor's hitmen. In dingy motel rooms and long drives across state lines, Sarah discovered the man behind Jack's wealth, a tech genius who'd made millions, then dedicated his life to fighting corruption after his sister died from a contaminated water supply that the mayor had covered up. They developed a rhythm, these two strangers thrown together by circumstance. Jack taught Sarah how to follow money trails through offshore accounts. Sarah taught Jack how to disappear in plain sight, how to walk like you belong, how to blend with the working class the wealthy never truly see. In a motel outside Nashville, Jack showed her the full scope of Wilson's corruption, the bribes, the kickbacks, the environmental regulations ignored for profit. The cancer clusters that followed, including the one that had struck Sarah's mother. "He knew," Sarah whispered, staring at the documents. "He knew what those chemicals would do." "Yes." Jack's voice was gentle. "That's why we have to stop him." In St. Louis, they narrowly escaped Wilson's men in a crowded farmer's market. Jack pulled Sarah into a passionate kiss as the hitmen passed, their faces hidden behind the intimacy of two lovers. The kiss lasted longer than necessary, both of them breathless when they pulled apart. "Sorry," Jack murmured, not looking sorry at all. "Tactical decision." Sarah's fingers lingered on her lips. "Very tactical. You could have just disappeared," Sarah said one night as they shared a cheap takeout dinner. "Gone anywhere with your money. Why risk everything?" Jack's fingers brushed hers. "Some things matter more than safety. Some wrongs need to be made right." What Sarah didn't tell him was how she'd searched his name online during a gas station stop. How she'd seen the photos of the playboy tech millionaire from his past, the women, the parties, the excess. The man before her now, with his haunted eyes and gentle hands, seemed like someone else entirely. When Sarah's mother's condition worsened, Jack arranged for the best specialists, paying for treatments the insurance had denied. They snuck into the hospital through service entrances, Sarah disguised as a nurse, Jack as an orderly. In her mother's private room, Sarah watched as Jack sat beside the bed, holding her mother's frail hand while explaining the treatment plan he'd arranged. "Why are you helping us?" her mother asked, her voice thin but direct. Jack's answer was simple, "Because your daughter saved my life." Later, in the hospital corridor, Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. "I can't ever repay you," she whispered. "You already have," he said, his eyes holding hers. "You reminded me what I'm fighting for." Their first kiss, their real first kiss, came that night in the hospital parking lot. No pretense of escape, no audience to fool. Just two broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. But as they gathered evidence against Wilson, Jack grew quieter, more withdrawn. Sarah would catch him staring into space, guilt shadowing his features. "What aren't you telling me?" she finally asked one night. Jack's silence spoke volumes. But Mayor Wilson wasn't going down without a fight. When they finally confronted him with the evidence, he had one last card to play. "You think you've won?" he sneered at Jack. "I know your secret. The real reason you left Silicon Valley. Tell her, Jack. Tell her what you did." Jack's face went pale. Sarah felt her world tilting as Jack confessed the truth: the car accident that killed 3 people when he was driving drunk years ago, the cover-up his wealthy parents arranged, the guilt that had haunted him ever since. "That's why I had to make things right," Jack whispered, unable to meet her eyes. "But I understand if you can't forgive me." Sarah stood frozen, torn between betrayal and the love that had grown between them. She walked away that night, heart shattered anew. 3 months passed. The mayor was arrested, his empire crumbling. Sarah's mother began to recover with her new treatments. And Jack disappeared from her life, respecting her silence. Until the night he knocked on her door again, this time with nothing but the truth in his hands. "I turned myself in," he said simply. "I'm facing the consequences of what I did. It won't bring those people back, but it's the right thing to do." Sarah looked at the man before her, flawed, broken, but fighting to be better. "The hardest thing about forgiveness," she said finally, "is learning to forgive yourself." Their second chance didn't come easy. There were court dates and community service, therapy sessions and tearful conversations. But they built something real from the ruins of their broken pasts, a foundation of honesty and redemption. 1 year later, they opened a new cafe together, using Jack's remaining fortune to create a place that employed people struggling to rebuild their lives. On the wall hung a simple frame with the words that had saved them both: "It's never too late to become the person you might have been." 5 years after that stormy night at Rosie's diner, Sarah stood in the doorway of their cafe, watching Jack teach their 3-year-old daughter how to arrange cookies on a tray. Emma had her father's dark curls and her mother's determined spirit, a perfect blend of them both. The bell above the door jingled as Mabel Johnson entered, moving slower now but still sharp as ever. "Got room for an old lady?" she asked, settling into her usual corner table. Sarah brought over Mabel's usual, black coffee and apple pie, and sat down across from her. "I saw the news," Mabel said, nodding toward the television where Mayor Wilson's prison sentence had just been extended for additional corruption charges. "Looks like justice finally caught up with him." "It did," Sarah agreed, watching as Jack helped a young man in recovery learn to operate the espresso machine. The cafe had become a sanctuary for second chances, for those battling addiction, for former inmates, for anyone society had written off. "You know," Mabel said, following Sarah's gaze to Jack, "when you two showed up bleeding on my porch that night, I thought you were both goners. But look at you now." Sarah smiled, touching the simple gold band on her finger. "Sometimes the worst night of your life becomes the beginning of something beautiful." Later that evening, after they'd closed up shop and tucked Emma into bed, Sarah found Jack on their small balcony, staring up at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Just thinking about how close I came to driving past that diner," he murmured, turning to face her. "One different turn, and I would have missed everything that matters." Sarah rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat that had become her home. Some things are just meant to be, even when they start with bullets and blood. "Especially then," Jack whispered, kissing the top of her head. Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and scarred. But it was theirs, a testament to the truth that sometimes, when we're most broken, we find exactly what we need to become whole again. If you were moved by Jack and Sarah's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us second chances are always possible, even when we feel most lost. I'd love to know, what country are you watching from? Share in the comments below.